Her job was support, stay out of the way. But when the enemy drone breached the airspace and panic set in, she pulled out her laptop, tapped a few keys, and grounded it before it reached the base. Now they call her by a different title, Lifesaver. Lieutenant Emma Hayes had been assigned to Naval Special Warfare Training Center for exactly 10 weeks. At 5 feet 4 inches with auburn hair always pulled back in a practical ponytail and hazel eyes that seemed to observe everything with quiet intensity, she moved through her duties with the kind of unobtrusive efficiency that made her practically invisible to most personnel. She carried a standard-issue medical bag along with what appeared to be a civilian laptop computer, which seemed unusual for military medical personnel, but wasn't remarkable enough to draw significant attention. To the SEAL candidates and training staff, she was simply their assigned nurse, competent at basic medical procedures, reliable for routine healthcare, but clearly designated for support functions that kept her away from the serious business of warrior training. The candidates understood her role to be strictly supportive and non-tactical. She was there to handle minor injuries, monitor health conditions, and provide basic medical care during training exercises. Her instructions were explicit: stay out of the way during tactical operations, provide medical support from safe distances, and avoid any involvement in combat-related training that could put medical personnel at risk or interfere with realistic training scenarios. Lieutenant Hayes followed these instructions precisely, maintaining appropriate distance during training exercises, providing medical care only when specifically requested, and keeping her laptop computer with her for what appeared to be medical record-keeping and administrative duties. Her presence was professional but peripheral, exactly what was expected from support personnel in a special operations training environment. But sometimes the most peripheral people possess the most central capabilities. Welcome to Silent Salute, where we discover that support roles often conceal the most critical expertise. Before we continue this incredible story, tell us in the comments which country you're watching from today. And if you believe that the people told to stay out of the way are sometimes the ones most capable of saving the day, hit that subscribe button to support our channel. We're honored to share these remarkable stories with you. Class 334 was particularly intense. 26 candidates from diverse military backgrounds, all pushing themselves through training designed to forge America's most elite warriors. The daily routine was relentless: brutal physical conditioning, advanced weapons training, underwater demolition exercises, tactical simulations, and psychological challenges that tested every aspect of human endurance and mental toughness. Through it all, Lieutenant Hayes provided medical support from her designated support positions, maintaining the peripheral role that kept her away from the tactical realities of special operations training. The candidates rarely interacted with Lieutenant Hayes beyond necessary medical procedures. She was competent at treating minor injuries, professional in her medical assessments, and reliable for basic healthcare needs. But she was also remarkably quiet about anything beyond medical matters, never engaging in tactical discussions, never offering opinions about training procedures, and never indicating any interest in or knowledge of military operations beyond her medical responsibilities. Among the candidates was Staff Sergeant Marcus Chun, a former Army Special Forces medic who'd served multiple combat deployments before applying for SEAL training. Chun was respected by his fellow candidates for his medical knowledge and combat experience, but he shared the common view that Lieutenant Hayes was strictly a support function with limited understanding of special operations realities. Lieutenant Hayes knows basic medical procedures, Chun had commented to his teammate during their 9th week, but she's clearly here for support rather than operational understanding. Probably never seen medicine practiced outside of controlled training environments. Petty Officer Williams, who'd served as a Navy corpsman before SEAL training, offered some perspective. Support medical personnel, serve an important function, Chun. Not everyone needs to understand tactical operations to provide valuable medical care. But Chin's observation reflected the broader perception among the candidates. Lieutenant Hayes seemed like standard military medical support, who was competent within her designated role, but who lacked the operational experience and tactical understanding that characterized special operations medical personnel. The situation that would change everything began during the 11th week of training, when Class 334 was scheduled for advanced combat medical exercises. This was one of the most challenging phases of SEAL training, where candidates learned to provide medical care under hostile conditions, including simulated enemy fire, limited resources, and high-stress environments that replicated operational realities. The training was being conducted by Master Chief Petty Officer Rodriguez, a veteran SEAL medic with over 15 years of experience in special operations medical training. Rodriguez was known throughout the special operations community for his expertise in combat medicine, his ability to teach life-saving procedures under extreme stress, and his demanding but effective training methods. Lieutenant Hayes was assigned to provide standard medical support for the training evolution, positioned at a safe observation point, where she could monitor candidates for signs of real injury while remaining out of the way of the simulated combat medical scenarios. Her laptop computer was with her, presumably for recording medical observations and maintaining training records. The combat medical training was intensive and realistic, designed to teach candidates how to provide life-saving medical care while under enemy fire, with limited equipment, and under extreme psychological pressure. Rodriguez created scenarios that replicated the chaos and danger of actual combat medical situations. Combat medicine, Rodriguez explained to the candidates, isn't about having perfect conditions and unlimited time. It's about saving lives when everything is going wrong, when you're under fire, and when failure means your teammate dies. The training progression included increasingly challenging scenarios, treating gunshot wounds while under simulated enemy fire, performing emergency surgery with minimal equipment, and making life-and-death medical decisions under extreme time pressure. During one particularly intense scenario, Rodriguez had created a simulation where a candidate was playing the role of a severely wounded soldier with massive bleeding from a simulated arterial injury. The scenario required other candidates to provide immediate medical care while under simulated enemy fire from multiple directions. This soldier has approximately 3 minutes before he bleeds out, Rodriguez announced to the candidates treating the simulated casualty. You're under heavy enemy fire, extraction isn't available, and you have limited medical supplies. Save his life. The candidates began working frantically to control the simulated bleeding, but the scenario was designed to be overwhelming. The combination of time pressure, simulated enemy fire, and limited resources was creating exactly the kind of chaos that characterized real combat medical emergencies. As the exercise progressed, it became clear that the candidates were struggling with the scenario. Despite their medical training and Rodriguez's instruction, they couldn't effectively control the simulated bleeding while managing the tactical challenges of operating under enemy fire. You're losing him, Rodriguez called out, increasing the pressure on the candidates. The bleeding isn't controlled, and you're running out of time. The candidates tried different approaches, but the scenario was designed to test their ability to function under extreme stress, and many were becoming overwhelmed by the combination of medical and tactical challenges. Lieutenant Hayes was observing the exercise from her designated support position, watching the candidates struggle with the combat medical scenario while maintaining her peripheral role in the training. But as the scenario continued and the candidates' struggles became more apparent, Lieutenant Hayes began moving closer to the exercise area. She was still maintaining appropriate distance, but her observation had become more focused and intense. Time is running out, Rodriguez announced. This soldier is going to die if you don't get this bleeding controlled immediately. At that moment, something unexpected happened that would change everything about how the facility understood Lieutenant Hayes' capabilities. The training facility's security alarm activated, indicating an immediate aerial threat that required emergency response. An unidentified drone had breached the facility's airspace and was approaching the training area at high speed. Aerial threat detected, the facility's public address system announced. All personnel implement immediate cover procedures. Unidentified drone approaching training area. The combat medical exercise was immediately suspended as candidates and instructors sought cover from the potential drone threat. The aircraft's intentions were unknown, and its approach pattern suggested it could be conducting surveillance or potentially carrying weapons that posed danger to personnel in the training area. Rodriguez was coordinating the emergency response when he realized that the simulated bleeding scenario had become a real emergency. The candidate playing the wounded soldier had actually been injured during the confusion of the drone threat response and was now experiencing genuine bleeding that required immediate medical attention. This is real, Rodriguez called out. We have actual bleeding that needs immediate medical intervention. The injured candidate was lying in an exposed position where the approaching drone could potentially observe or target rescue efforts. The combination of real medical emergency and genuine security threat created exactly the kind of complex, dangerous situation that special operations personnel encountered in actual combat. The training staff was dealing with the security threat while trying to coordinate medical response to the injured candidate. The tactical situation was chaotic, with personnel focused on drone defense while medical needs required immediate attention in an exposed, potentially dangerous location. Lieutenant Hayes was observing the unfolding emergency from her support position, but instead of remaining in her designated safe area, she did something that shocked everyone present. She pulled out her laptop computer and began typing rapidly, her fingers moving across the keyboard with the kind of speed and precision that suggested advanced technical expertise rather than medical record-keeping. "What's Lieutenant Hayes doing?" Chen asked, watching her intense focus on the computer while everyone else was dealing with the emergency. Williams was equally puzzled. Why is she on her laptop during a security emergency? But Lieutenant Hayes was working with obvious purpose and technical competence, accessing what appeared to be sophisticated software systems that were far more advanced than standard medical administrative programs. Suddenly, the approaching drone began exhibiting erratic flight behavior. Its steady approach toward the training facility changed to unpredictable movements, altitude variations, and apparent loss of navigational control. "The drone is malfunctioning," one of the security personnel reported. "It's losing altitude and appears to be experiencing system failures." Within moments, the drone had lost all controlled flight capability and crashed in a safe area away from personnel, eliminating the security threat that had created the emergency situation. As the drone threat was neutralized, Lieutenant Hayes immediately closed her laptop and moved quickly toward the injured candidate, who was still bleeding and needed immediate medical attention. But now she wasn't moving with the cautious approach of support personnel, staying out of the way. She was moving with the confident, purposeful advance of someone who knew exactly what she needed to do in a complex emergency situation. "I need immediate access to the injured candidate," Lieutenant Hayes called out with unmistakable authority. "The bleeding needs to be controlled now." Rodriguez, who was still coordinating the emergency response, was surprised by Lieutenant Hayes's sudden display of medical authority and confidence. "Lieutenant Hayes, we're working to secure the area so medical personnel can safely access the casualty." But Lieutenant Hayes was already moving toward the injured candidate, and her approach was unlike anything the candidates had seen from her during months of routine medical support. "The area is secure," she replied with professional confidence. "The drone threat has been neutralized, and immediate medical intervention is required." As Lieutenant Hayes reached the injured candidate, she began providing medical care with expertise and efficiency that exceeded anything the candidates had witnessed during routine training injuries. Her medical procedures were advanced, her techniques were sophisticated, and her ability to work under pressure was clearly the result of extensive experience with emergency medicine. "Arterial bleeding from the left femoral artery," Lieutenant Hayes announced as she examined the injury. "Requires immediate pressure control and emergency surgical intervention." Her medical assessment was more detailed and technically advanced than the candidates expected from someone they considered routine support personnel. Chun, who had medical training from his special forces background, was watching Lieutenant Hayes's emergency medical procedures with growing amazement. "Ma'am, those are advanced trauma surgery techniques. Where did you learn those procedures?" Lieutenant Hayes was working intensively to control the bleeding while responding. Emergency medical training that included trauma surgery and combat casualty care. But Rodriguez could see that Lieutenant Hayes's medical techniques exceeded standard military medical training and approached the expertise level of specialized trauma surgeons. "Lieutenant Hayes, your medical procedures are more advanced than typical military medical training. What's your background?" Lieutenant Hayes had successfully controlled the bleeding and was monitoring the candidate's vital signs while coordinating evacuation procedures. Previous assignments required advanced medical capabilities, including trauma surgery and emergency medicine under challenging conditions. Williams asked the question that everyone was thinking. "Ma'am, how did you neutralize that drone threat?" Lieutenant Hayes paused her medical work to look at the candidates and instructors who were clearly confused about what they had witnessed. Electronic warfare capabilities, she replied simply. The drone was neutralized through electronic countermeasures. Rodriguez stepped forward with obvious recognition that Lieutenant Hayes possessed capabilities that exceeded her assigned support role. Lieutenant Hayes, electronic warfare and advanced trauma surgery aren't typically part of standard military medical training. What's your actual background? Lieutenant Hayes seemed to be considering how much information to reveal about her qualifications and previous assignments. My previous assignments required integration of medical, technical, and operational capabilities for missions where traditional support structures weren't available. Chen was beginning to understand that Lieutenant Hayes' support role might have been concealing much more advanced capabilities. Ma'am, are you saying you've served in assignments that required both advanced medical training and technical warfare capabilities? Lieutenant Hayes nodded while continuing to monitor the injured candidate's condition. I've served with units that conducted missions requiring specialized medical support in environments where medical personnel also needed technical and operational capabilities to ensure mission success. Master Chief Williams, who had arrived at the emergency scene, was processing the implications of what Lieutenant Hayes had revealed. Lieutenant Hayes, your electronic warfare capabilities and advanced medical training suggest experience that goes beyond standard military medical roles. Have you served with special operations units? Lieutenant Hayes' response confirmed what many had begun to suspect. I've served in assignments where medical personnel functioned as full operational team members with responsibilities that included medical care, technical operations, and tactical support. Rodriguez was clearly impressed by both Lieutenant Hayes' medical intervention and her technical capabilities. Ma'am, your combination of trauma surgery skills and electronic warfare expertise represents exactly the kind of integrated capability that modern special operations requires. The injured candidate, who had received Lieutenant Hayes' advanced medical care, was stable and ready for evacuation to advanced medical facilities. Her emergency intervention had successfully treated an arterial bleeding injury that could have been life-threatening. Lieutenant Hayes, the candidate said as he was prepared for evacuation, "Thank you for saving my life. That was incredible medical care under pressure." Williams looked around at the candidates and instructors who had witnessed Lieutenant Hayes' demonstration of advanced capabilities. Lieutenant Hayes, I think it's time we discussed expanding your role here beyond support functions. Your capabilities could significantly enhance our training programs. Lieutenant Hayes considered the proposal, understanding that her technical and medical expertise could contribute to SEAL training in ways that hadn't been available before. Master Chief, I'd be willing to share technical and medical techniques that could enhance candidate preparation for operational realities. Over the following weeks, Lieutenant Hayes transitioned from her cover role as routine support personnel to active participation in multiple aspects of SEAL training. Her combination of advanced medical expertise and electronic warfare capabilities created training opportunities that reflected the integrated nature of modern special operations. What Lieutenant Hayes brings to our program, Williams explained to the training staff, is demonstration that modern special operations requires integration of medical, technical, and tactical capabilities rather than separation of these functions. Lieutenant Hayes worked with candidates and instructors to develop training scenarios that included medical emergencies during electronic warfare operations, technical challenges that required medical and operational coordination, and complex situations where multiple capabilities had to be integrated for mission success. The operations I've participated in, Lieutenant Hayes explained to the candidates, required understanding that medical, technical, and tactical responsibilities are integrated functions. Effective special operations personnel must be prepared to contribute across all mission requirements. Her training scenarios included realistic medical emergencies during technical operations, electronic warfare challenges that required medical coordination, and decision-making exercises that integrated medical and technical considerations under operational pressure. Chun, who had initially viewed Lieutenant Hayes as routine support personnel, became one of her most dedicated students. Ma'am, your approach to integrating medical expertise with technical capabilities has completely changed how I think about special operations. You've shown us that the most effective operators are those who can contribute across multiple disciplines. Lieutenant Hayes's laptop computer, which had initially seemed like standard administrative equipment, was revealed to contain sophisticated electronic warfare software that provided capabilities essential for modern special operations in electronic threat environments. This technology, Lieutenant Hayes explained to the technical staff, represents integrated electronic warfare capabilities that enable medical and tactical personnel to operate effectively when traditional communication and navigation systems are compromised. The emergency medical procedure that had saved the candidate's life became a model for training that integrated medical and technical capabilities under pressure, demonstrating how advanced medical training could be enhanced by electronic warfare expertise. Lieutenant Hayes's integrated training programs were eventually adopted throughout Special Operations Commands, establishing new standards for medical technical integration that enhanced the effectiveness of special operations personnel worldwide. But perhaps Lieutenant Hayes's greatest contribution was demonstrating that support roles often conceal the most critical capabilities, and that the people told to stay out of the way are sometimes those most capable of saving lives and missions when emergencies develop. The story of Lieutenant Hayes became legendary at the training facility, shared with new classes as an example of how support personnel often possess advanced capabilities that exceed their assigned roles, and how the most valuable team members are often those whose full qualifications remain hidden until crises reveal their true expertise. The most important lesson you can learn here, instructors would tell new candidates, is that support personnel are often the most capable people on the team. The person told to stay out of the way might be the one most capable of saving your life. The candidate's assumption that Lieutenant Hayes was strictly support personnel became a reminder that peripheral roles often conceal central capabilities, and that the most essential team members are often those who seem least involved in primary operations. Years later, when Lieutenant Hayes had transitioned to other assignments, her legacy lived on in the enhanced training programs she developed and in the understanding that true operational excellence requires recognizing and utilizing the full capabilities of all team members, regardless of their assigned roles. Her story reminded everyone that in special operations, as in life, the most dangerous assumptions are those we make about people assigned to support roles, because the most supportive people are often those who possess the most advanced operational capabilities. Lieutenant Hayes's laptop computer and quiet support role had concealed electronic warfare expertise and advanced medical training that exceeded the capabilities of most special operations personnel, demonstrating that critical expertise often hides behind the most routine assignments. The emergency that revealed both her electronic warfare capabilities and her trauma surgery skills became a defining moment that established new standards for recognizing and utilizing integrated capabilities, regardless of official job descriptions or assigned functions. Now, instead of being called just support, Lieutenant Hayes earned a different title among the candidates and staff, Lifesaver. Because when the crisis came, when panic set in, and when lives were on the line, she was the one who stepped forward with exactly the capabilities needed to neutralize threats and save lives. Her transformation from peripheral support to recognized lifesaver demonstrated that the most critical team members are often those whose true capabilities remain hidden until emergencies reveal who really has the skills to make the difference between success and disaster. This story was brought to you by Silent Salute. Before we leave you today, here's our question. Have you ever discovered that someone assigned to a support role actually possessed advanced capabilities that far exceeded their job description? Have you encountered people whose peripheral assignments concealed central expertise? Tell us in the comments about the moments when you realized that support personnel often possess the most critical capabilities. And if you believe that the people told to stay out of the way are sometimes the ones most capable of saving the day, hit that subscribe button to support our channel. Every story reminds us that support roles often conceal essential expertise, and that the most valuable team members are often those whose true capabilities remain hidden until crises reveal their life-saving potential. We'll see you in the next story, where we'll discover another incredible tale of hidden expertise behind support assignments.